When you learn to embrace silence, you unlock one of the most powerful tools for understanding yourself. The world is filled with constant chatter, voices on television, endless scrolling on social media, opinions from friends, family, and even strangers you've never met. It's noise layered upon noise, and when you live inside it, you begin to forget what your own voice sounds like. You forget that within you there is a wisdom, a clarity, a direction that is constantly whispering, but because of the noise around you, you cannot hear it. Silence strengthens self-awareness because it removes the clutter long enough for you to reconnect with your own essence. Think about it. The times you've had your best ideas, your greatest realizations, were they in the middle of chaos or were they in the quiet moments when the world seems still? It is in silence that the mind is able to breathe, expand, and allow truth to rise to the surface. When you strip away noise, you strip away influence. Every time you expose yourself to too many voices, you unconsciously take on fragments of those voices. You start living by what others say you should do instead of what you know in your heart you must do. Silence allows you to draw a line between the outside world and the inner self. It becomes the boundary where you can observe your own thoughts without interruption, where you can ask yourself the most important questions. Who am I? What do I want? Where am I going? Without silence, these questions are drowned out by the echo of other people's desires. Self-awareness demands silence because awareness is not about what is happening outside of you, but what is happening within you. There is a reason why some of the greatest thinkers, leaders, and creators in history valued solitude. It was not isolation they sought, but the gift of silence. They understood that when you are silent, you become a student of your own mind. You begin to see patterns in your thoughts. You begin to understand the emotions that have been controlling you. You realize why you react the way you do, why you fear certain outcomes, why you hesitate when opportunity appears. Silence creates the room for those realizations to surface. When you don't take time to sit in silence, you keep repeating the same cycles without ever stopping to understand them. The human spirit longs for connection, but it also longs for understanding, and silence is the bridge to that understanding. It is where you learn to separate who you really are from the roles you play. In the noise of daily life, you may identify yourself as the worker, the parent, the friend, the partner. But when you sit in silence, all of those roles fade, and you are left with something raw, something real, something unshackable, the essence of you. That essence is what fuels authentic living, and you can only access it when you are willing to be still, to be quiet, to listen not to the outside world, but to the inside world. There is also an incredible power in observing what happens to your body and mind in silence. You begin to notice your breathing, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the thoughts that rise and pass like waves. You notice how much energy you spend worrying, how much time you spend rehearsing conversations in your mind, how easily distracted you become by meaningless things. Silence magnifies all of this, and while it may feel uncomfortable at first, that discomfort is the beginning of awareness. Most people run from silence because they are afraid of facing themselves. But the truth is, once you face yourself in silence, you become free. Free from denial, free from illusion, free from the weight, pretending to be something you are not. Another dimension of silence is its ability to sharpen intuition. Intuition is like a whisper. It is quiet, gentle, but immensely powerful. In the noise, you cannot hear it. But in silence, you begin to recognize its presence. You start to notice how it guides you, how it nudges you towards certain choices, how it protects you from harm. Self-awareness is not complete without listening. That inner guidance and silence is the doorway that allows you to hear it clearly. When you cultivate silence, you strengthen that inner compass, and it becomes easier to make decisions, easier to trust yourself, easier to walk a path that is truly yours rather than one forced upon you. In silence, you also learn the value of detachment. You begin to see that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. This distinction is the foundation of self-awareness. You can sit quietly and notice a thought of doubt arise. But in that moment, you realize it is just a thought, not your identity. You can notice a memory of failure arise, but it no longer controls you because you've learned to observe without attaching yourself to it. Silence is the practice ground for this kind of awareness. And the more you practice it, the more clarity and control you develop over your own mind. When you bring silence into your daily life, it starts to shape the way you experience everything else. You no longer react impulsively to every situation because silence has taught you patience. You no longer seek constant validation because silence has given you confidence in your own voice. You no longer feel as restless in the face of uncertainty because silence has rooted you in self-trust. This is why silence is not weakness. It is strength. It is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is not loneliness. It is wholeness. Through silence, you grow into someone who does not simply exist in the noise of the world, but someone who walks with clarity, intention, and awareness of self. Focus is the language of silence, And when you understand this, you begin to unlock a level of clarity and direction that very few people ever achieve. Most people believe focus is about forcing the mind to concentrate, but true focus is not about strain or pressure. It is about space. Silence is what gives your mind that space. Imagine a cluttered room where every corner is filled with objects. No matter how hard you try to move, you will always bump into something. That's what noise does to the mind. It fills every corner with distractions, doubts, unnecessary conversations, and opinions. But silence clears the room. It creates emptiness. And in that emptiness, you finally have space to move, to think, and to direct your attention where it matters most. When you surround yourself with constant noise, your attention is scattered in 100 directions. You may think you're focusing, but in reality, you are splitting your energy across things that do not matter. Silence brings everything back into alignment. It pulls your thoughts inward and filters out the irrelevant. It sharpens your awareness like a lens coming into focus. Suddenly, what was once blurry becomes clear, and you can see the path ahead without confusion. Focus is not created by adding more effort. It is created by removing what is unnecessary, and silence is the tool that removes it. Consider how often people lose themselves because they cannot focus. They start projects but never finish them. They set goals but abandon them halfway. They know what they want but constantly get distracted by what others are doing. The reason is not lack of ability, it is lack of silence, because silence is the foundation of discipline. It teaches you how to pause before reacting, how to filter your thoughts, how to choose deliberately instead of being pulled by impulse. In silence, you learn how to commit your energy to one direction without scattering it into 1,000 meaningless fragments. When you sit in silence, something powerful happens. You begin to hear the rhythm of your own mind. You notice how quickly thoughts jump from one subject to another. You see how your mind drifts into worry, into fear, into fantasy. At first, it may seem chaotic, but as you remain silent, the noise begins to settle like dust in the air. Slowly, clarity emerges. That clarity is focus. And once you experience it, you realize how rare and valuable it is in a world where everyone's attention is constantly being hijacked. Silence trains you to notice the noise. Bring your attention back to what truly matters. Focus is energy. Every thought you entertain is an investment of energy. The reason so many people feel drained, exhausted, and unmotivated is because they're leaking energy into distractions, gossip, endless scrolling, and trivial conversations. Silence plugs those leaks. It teaches you to value your energy and direct it purposefully. When you are silent, you are not wasting words on things that don't serve you. You are not explaining yourself to people who will never understand. You are not scattering your focus on issues that don't advance your vision. You are conserving your energy, and that conservation transforms into power. When you do speak, your words carry weight. When you act, your actions carry impact. That is the gift of silence. It turns focus into strength. There is also a deeper connection between silence and creativity. Every great idea requires focus, and focus requires stillness. Noise blocks creativity because it clutters the mind with repetition, distraction, and conformity. But silence opens the door for imagination to flow. In silence, you allow yourself to concentrate fully on a single idea, to nurture it, to explore it without interruption. That kind of focus creates breakthroughs. Many people never experience their full creative potential because they are always surrounded by noise. They never give their mind the silence it needs to focus deeply. Silence also disciplines your emotions. How many times has anger, frustration, or impatience caused you to lose focus? Emotional noise is just as distracting as external noise. When you practice silence, you learn how to separate yourself from your emotions long enough to regain clarity. You don't suppress the emotion, but you observe it without letting it control you. That ability to pause, to stay still, to stay silent in moments of emotional turbulence gives you the power to remain focused even under pressure. While others lose themselves in reaction, you remain grounded in direction. When you build focus through silence, you begin to experience time differently. Most people complain about not having enough time, but the truth is, it's not a lack of time. It's a lack of focus. A focused hour of work in silence can achieve more than 10 scattered hours filled with noise. Silence compresses time because it allows you to operate with full attention and intention. It eliminates the wasted minutes and wasted energy that come from distraction. You step into a flow where you are fully present, and that presence multiplies your productivity. There is also a profound confidence that comes from focusing in silence. When you are silent, you are not competing with the world's noise. You are not comparing yourself to others. You are simply locked in on your own path. That kind of focus makes you unshakable. People will wonder why you are not easily swayed, why you don't react to every opinion, why you don't join in every conversation. It's because silence has taught you where your attention belongs. You no longer waste it on things beneath your purpose. That confidence becomes visible, and without ever saying a word, people notice your strength. Focus is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be, and silence is what allows you to cross that bridge without distraction. When you learn to cultivate silence in your mind, in your environment, in your daily habits, you gain control over the one thing most people will never master: attention. And attention is life itself, because what you focus on expands. If you spend your days lost in noise, you expand chaos. If you spend your days rooted in silence, you expand clarity. And when clarity expands, direction becomes effortless. And when direction becomes effortless, your life begins to align with the vision you hold within. Silence protects energy in ways most people never realize, because so much of what drains you in life is not the work you do or the challenges you face, but the constant release of words, explanations, and reactions that were never necessary in the first place. Every time you speak, you spend energy. Every time you argue, defend yourself, or explain something to someone who was never interested in understanding you, you are leaking power. And the truth is, not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every feeling needs to be expressed. Not every dream needs to be shared with others. Silence acts as a shield, preserving your energy for the things that truly matter and keeping you from wasting it on things that will never serve your growth. People often mistake silence for weakness, but silence is not the absence of strength. It is the containment of strength. Think of it like water behind a dam. The water builds power because it is being held back, concentrated, preserved. The moment the dam opens, the water rushes with force. In the same way, your words and your energy carry greater impact when you have learned to hold them, to preserve them, to release them only when the timing is right. Speaking without thought dilutes your energy. Remaining silent until you are certain multiplies it. One of the greatest mistakes people make is giving away too much of themselves through unnecessary conversation. They talk about their plans before they've taken action. They reveal their weakness to people who use them against them. They share their vision with those who do not believe, and in doing so, they allow doubt to seep into their spirit. Silence protects you from that. When you keep your energy within, you create a kind of sacred space around your ideas and dreams. You nurture them in private, allowing them to grow stronger before exposing them to the world. Energy is like a flame in its early stages. Too much wind and it goes out. Silence is what shields that flame until it is strong enough to burn on its own. There is also a tremendous emotional energy that gets wasted when people engage in arguments, gossip, or explanations that lead nowhere. You cannot control how others perceive you, no matter how many words you use. You cannot convince someone of your worth if they have already chosen not to see it. You cannot win peace by debating endlessly. What silence does is it gives you the power to walk away from that drain. It gives you the ability to protect your emotional energy by refusing to feed conflict that does not elevate you. Every word you hold back in those moments becomes energy saved, strength preserved, clarity maintained. Silence also protects mental energy. The mind is constantly producing thoughts, and if you express every single one of them, you exhaust yourself. The discipline of silence teaches you to filter your thoughts, to decide which are worth speaking and which are better kept within. That filtration process strengthens your focus and keeps your mind sharp. You begin to recognize the difference between speaking from impulse and speaking from intention. This awareness saves you from the fatigue of regret. Regret for words spoken in anger. Regret for secrets shared too soon. Regret for promises made without thought. Silence prevents those drains by giving you space to pause before you spend your energy. There is power in observation, and silence allows you to conserve energy by watching rather than reacting. Most people waste energy responding to every situation immediately. They jump into conversations without listening. They react to criticism without reflection. They defend themselves without understanding. Silence interrupts that pattern. It trains you to listen, to watch, to gather information without spending your energy on unnecessary responses. The more you observe, the more wisdom you gain. And wisdom itself becomes energy because it allows you to act with precision instead of scattering yourself in all directions. Another aspect of energy protection through silence is spiritual energy. Deep inside, you carry a light, a vibration that is affected by everything you engage in. Negative conversations, judgmental people, endless complaining. All of it lowers your vibration and weakens your energy. Silence protects your spirit from absorbing that negativity. When you refuse to participate in gossip, when you choose not to speak in environments filled with toxicity, you are shielding your inner energy from contamination. That spiritual preservation keeps you aligned with your purpose, keeps you connected to your vision, and allows your spirit to remain strong even when surrounded by negativity. Even in relationships, silence can protect your energy. Not every disagreement needs your voice. Not every misunderstanding requires immediate explanation. Sometimes the greatest way to protect yourself is to choose silence, to let time reveal the truth, to let your actions speak instead of your words. Arguments that could go on for hours often end quickly when silence is chosen over escalation. The energy you save in those moments can then be redirected toward peace, toward progress, toward building instead of breaking. Silence also deepens self-control. When you can hold back your words, you prove to yourself that you are not a slave to impulse. That discipline builds inner strength, and that strength is energy in its purest form. You begin to walk through life with a reservoir of calmness that others cannot easily disturb. People may provoke you, but your silence shields your energy from their attempts. Situations may tempt you to waste words, but your restraint becomes your power. Over time, this discipline compounds, and you find yourself with a level of energy that feels almost unshakable. Think about the people you've met who carry a certain presence, a quiet authority that requires no explanation. That presence comes from preserved energy. They do not waste their power on every conversation. They do not scatter their focus across meaningless exchanges. They protect their energy with silence, and as a result, when they do speak, their words await, their actions have depth. Their presence demands respect without ever asking for it. That is what silence does. It keeps your energy concentrated, refined, untouchable by noise and distraction. Growth happens in quiet reflection, and it is in those still moments that you begin to see yourself clearly. Life moves fast. People rush from one task to the next, filling every moment with activity, conversations, and distractions. But without taking time to pause and reflect, you never truly understand where you are, why you are there, and where you are going. Reflection is the mirror of the soul, and silence is the space that allows that mirror to appear. When you step back from noise and movement, you give yourself the opportunity to look inward, to examine your choices, to question your patterns, and to recognize the lessons hidden in your experiences. That is where growth begins, not in the chaos of doing, but in the quiet of being. When you reflect in silence, you see things that are invisible in the rush of daily life. You notice how certain habits shape your outcome, how certain thoughts keep repeating, how certain people influence your energy. You see the way fear has stopped you in moments where courage was needed. You recognize the times you settled when you could have risen higher. Reflection gives you the clarity to connect the dots of your life, to see the bigger picture forming from all the small decisions you've made. Without that quiet reflection, you move blindly, repeating cycles, never realizing why you end up in the same situations again and again. Growth requires awareness, and awareness is born in silence. Reflection also strengthens wisdom. Experience alone does not create wisdom. It is the reflection upon experience that transforms it into insight. Two people can go through the same challenge. One emerges bitter, the other emerges wiser. The difference is reflection. In silence, you take the time to process, to ask yourself what the challenge was meant to teach you, what lesson was hidden within the pain, what strength you discovered in the struggle. Without reflection, you miss those lessons, and life has to repeat them again until you learn. Growth is accelerated when you make reflection a discipline, because every experience a teacher, instead of just a memory. In quiet reflection, you also come face with your true self. Most of the time, people live outwardly, showing the version of themselves they want the world to see, but in silence, the masks fall. You see yourself without pretense, without performance, without pretending. You meet the parts of yourself you often ignore, the doubts, the fears, the insecurities, but also the hidden strengths, the quiet resilience, the untapped potential. Reflection is not always comfortable because it reveals both your shadows and your light, but it is through facing both that you grow. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge, and you cannot strengthen what you refuse to see. Silence forces you to acknowledge, and acknowledgement is the first step toward transformation. Reflection in silence also deepens gratitude. When you pause and look back, you realize how far you've come, how many obstacles you've overcome, how many blessings you've received along the way. Gratitude shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance, and that shift fuels growth. Instead of focusing on what you lack, you begin to focus on what you already have and how you can expand it. Gratitude gives you strength to keep moving forward, and it is born in moments of quiet reflection when you allow yourself to see the richness of your journey. Another dimension of growth in reflection is the ability to set new intentions. Silence creates a space where you can dream without interruption, where you can envision possibilities beyond your current reality. When you take time to reflect, you are not only looking back, you are also looking forward. You begin to ask yourself where you want to go next, who you want to become, what life you want to create. Reflection helps you align your daily actions with your higher vision because it reminds you that growth is not accidental, it is intentional. Without reflection, you drift. With reflection, you direct. Quiet reflection also develops resilience. Life will always bring challenges, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty. If you never reflect, those moments can break you. But when you reflect, you extract meaning from them, and meaning turns pain into fuel. Reflection teaches you to see every setback as preparation, every obstacle as training, every delay as protection. This mindset builds resilience because you are no longer crushed by adversity. You are shaped by it. Reflection transforms hardship into wisdom, and wisdom strengthens your spirit for the next chapter of your journey. In silence, you also learn the value of patience. Growth is not instant. Seeds do not become trees overnight, and neither do people. Reflection teaches you to appreciate the process, to understand that progress often happens in small steps, subtle shifts, quiet changes that accumulate over time. When you reflect, you see those small shifts in yourself, and that recognition motivates you to continue. Without reflection, you become impatient, expecting immediate results, and when they don't come, you give up. With reflection, you realize growth is already happening, even if it's not yet visible to others. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of reflection is that it reconnects you with your purpose. In the business of life, it is easy to forget why you started, to lose sight of what matters, to drift away from your core values. Reflection brings you back. It asks you the deeper questions. What truly matters to me? What impact do I want to have? Am I living in alignment with my highest self? Those questions stir something within you, and the answers you find in silence remind you of your purpose. When you are anchored in purpose, growth becomes inevitable because every choice, every action, every step you take is guided by something greater than yourself. Silence separates you from distraction in a world that constantly fights for your attention. Everywhere you go, something is demanding a piece of your focus. Notifications buzzing on your phone, endless voices on television and radio, conversations happening online, people's opinions being thrown at you from every angle. Without realizing it, your energy is divided into fragments, scattered across so many directions that very little remains for what truly matters. This is why silence is not just the absence of noise, it is the creation of space. It is the deliberate choice to step away from the external world long enough to protect your attention, to reclaim your focus, and to keep your goals at the center of your vision. Silence becomes the shield that guards you from distractions and keeps your life aligned with purpose. Distractions are not always obvious. Sometimes they come disguised as opportunities, as things that look important but pull you away from your path. At other times, they come through people, friends who want your time, family members who don't understand your vision, coworkers who fill conversations with negativity. Each of these distractions may seem small, but over time, they steal enormous amounts of focus. Silence gives you the clarity to recognize them. When you are silent, you notice how certain environments drain your energy, how certain conversations leave you feeling empty, how certain habits pull you off course. You see what others overlook. And in that awareness, you gain the power to separate yourself from the noise before it consumes you. There is a discipline in silence that trains the mind to stop chasing everything at once. Distraction thrives on reaction, the instant urge to check a message, to respond to a comment, to jump into a conversation. But silence interrupts that cycle. When you practice silence, you teach yourself that not every message requires a reply. Not every voice deserves your attention. Not every invitation needs to be accepted. That discipline frees you from the grip of distraction. It allows you to move through life with intention, choosing carefully where your energy goes instead of scattering it into whatever appears in the moment. Silence also creates a boundary that others begin to respect. When you are constantly available, constantly speaking, constantly reacting, people assume they can reach you whenever they want. But when you embrace silence, you create a sense of distance that demands respect. Others begin to realize you are not easily pulled into meaningless chatter. You are not swayed by constant demands. You are not distracted by trivial things. That boundary protects your time and your mind, allowing you to stay anchored in your own direction. In silence, you also discover the difference between what is urgent and what is important. The noise of the world pressures you to treat everything as urgent. Every notification, every request, every update. But silence slows you down, and in that slowing, you see that most of what feels urgent is actually irrelevant. What is truly important often speaks softly, hidden beneath the surface. It may be the dream you've been ignoring, the book you've been meaning to write, the skill you've been wanting to develop. Distractions shout loudly, but purpose whispers quietly. Without silence, you hear only the shouting. With silence, you finally hear the whisper. Another way silence separates you from distraction is by reconnecting you to the present moment. Distractions thrive when your mind is scattered between the past and the future, worrying about mistakes or anticipating outcomes. But silence grounds you in now. In the stillness, you notice your breath, the rhythm of your body, the clarity of your thoughts. You become fully present. And in that presence, distractions lose their power. The past cannot pull you back. The future cannot pull you forward. You are anchored in the moment, free to focus entirely on what is in front of you. That presence is one of the greatest antidotes to distraction because it gives you control over your attention. There is also a creative power in silence that distraction can never provide. Distraction scatters ideas, leaving them incomplete, half-developed, abandoned. Silence allows you to dive deep into one thought, one vision, one project, until it unfolds into something powerful. The reason many people never complete what they start is because they never step away from distraction long enough to focus deeply. Silence separates you from that pattern. It teaches you how to remain with one idea, how to nurture it without interference, how to give it your full attention until it manifests into reality. On a deeper level, silence separates you from the distraction of comparison. In a noisy world, it is easy to measure yourself against others, to get caught in the endless race of who is ahead, who is behind, who has more, who has less. That comparison steals your peace and distorts your focus. But when you are silent, you are no longer looking outward, you are looking inward. You no longer measure your progress against anyone else's timeline because silence reminds you that your journey is your own. This separation from comparison, one of the purest forms of freedom, because it allows you to stay loyal to your own vision without being pulled into competition that is never meant for you. Silence also strengthens patience, which itself separates you from distraction. Distraction thrives on urgency, on the desire for immediate results, immediate feedback, immediate gratification. But silence teaches you to slow down, to trust the process, to allow growth to unfold naturally. That patience gives you resilience against distractions that promise quick rewards but deliver long-term emptiness. When you are silent, you learn to value depth over speed, meaning over noise, and progress over appearance. That mindset keeps you steady while others are pulled in every direction. Ultimately, silence creates a sanctuary within you that distractions cannot penetrate. It is the place you return to when the world becomes too loud, when people's voices become overwhelming, when your own mind feels scattered. In that sanctuary, you find alignment, you find focus, you find peace. And from that place of inner stillness, you walk back into the noisy world, not as someone consumed by it, but as someone who can rise above it. Carrying clarity in the midst of chaos and direction in the midst of distraction, your silence speaks louder than words because silence carries a weight that speech often cannot. When you choose silence, you project confidence without having to announce it. You reveal strength without having to prove it. You show wisdom without having to explain it. In a world where people constantly rush to talk, to argue, to defend themselves, the one who remains silent stands apart. That silence becomes a presence, a force that others feel even when no words are spoken. People begin to notice that you don't waste energy trying to convince. You don't spend time in meaningless debates. You don't scatter your voice just to be heard. Instead, your silence communicates certainty, self-control, and power in ways that speech never could. There is a reason why silence unsettles people. When someone stays silent, it forces others to reflect. It makes them question themselves, their assumptions, their judgments. Words can be resisted, argued against, ignored, but silence cannot be escaped. It lingers in the air, creating space for thought, leaving room for truth to surface. Silence has a way of exposing what words often try to cover. When you stay silent in moments of conflict, you reveal maturity. When you stay silent in the face of provocation, you reveal discipline. When you stay silent instead of boasting, you reveal confidence. Silence becomes its own language, one that communicates far deeper than speech ever will. Your silence also shows that you are not desperate for attention. In today's world, people fight to be seen, to be heard, to be validated. They post endlessly, argue endlessly, shout endlessly, all in an attempt to prove their worth. But silence communicates something different. It says you already know your worth. You do not need to broadcast it. You do not need to prove it. You do not need to seek recognition from others because your recognition comes from within. That kind of silence draws attention than noise ever could. People begin to wonder what you're thinking, why you are so composed, what gives you such calm. And in their wondering, your silence speaks. Silence also communicates boundaries. When you choose not to respond to negativity, you are telling the world that your energy is too valuable to be wasted. When you do not explain yourself endlessly, you are showing that your life does not require justification to anyone. When you walk away instead of arguing, you are making it clear that your peace matters more than being right. These messages are delivered without words, yet they are louder and more powerful than any speech. Silence becomes a declaration that you will not be dragged into places that do not align with your purpose, and people begin to respect you not because of what you said, but because of what you chose not to say. In many situations, silence commands more respect than words. Think of the moments when someone speaks too much, their words lose weight, their presence loses value, their voice becomes just another sound in the noise. But the one who speaks little, who holds silence until it is necessary, commands attention when they finally do speak. Their words are listened to because they are rare, because they are chosen carefully, because they are backed by silence. That silence creates gravity. It turns ordinary words into something memorable. Because people know that if you broke your silence to say something that must have been important, silence is also a reflection of deep inner strength. It takes little effort to argue, to react, to fill the air with words, but it takes great strength to restrain yourself, to remain calm when provoked, to withhold speech when silence will say more. That strength communicates itself in your presence. People sense it without you having to declare it. They feel it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you do not get shaken easily, in the way you remain unbothered by things that would disturb others. That silent strength often inspires more than speeches do because it is lived, not spoken. Silence also allows your actions to speak in your place. Words can promise, but actions prove. Words can inspire for a moment, but actions leave lasting impact. When you stay silent, you redirect your energy into action instead of explanation. You no longer waste time convincing others. You simply show them through what you do. That shift creates credibility because people trust actions more than they trust words. Your silence, paired with consistent action, speaks of discipline, integrity, and commitment far louder than repeated assurances ever could. There is a profound elegance in silence that words often lack. It creates mystery, depth, and intrigue. Silence suggests that there is more within you than you are showing, that your mind holds thoughts unspoken, that your spirit carries strength unseen. That depth draws people in, not because you ask for their attention, but because your silence naturally commands it. In this way, silence becomes not only a form of communication, but also a form of influence. You influence others not by overwhelming them with words, but by creating a space that invites them to reflect, to listen, to observe. In relationships, silence can often speak of love, understanding, and presence more deeply than words. Sometimes simply being there in silence with someone communicates more than any speech could. Sometimes withholding unnecessary criticism communicates more support than offering advice. Silence shows that you are not always trying to fix, not always trying to fill, but simply choosing to be present. And in leadership, silence communicates trust because it shows you do not need to dominate every space with your voice. You allow others to contribute. You listen deeply, and that listening builds respect. Ultimately, silence is never empty. It is full of meaning, full of presence, full of power. It communicates strength, confidence, wisdom, and boundaries without ever making a sound. It is the voice of self-control, the sound of discipline, the language of power spoken without words. Your silence says what words often cannot. And in its stillness, it carries a message that echoes louder than any speech.